Swashbucklers, you're listening to Under the Crossbones, episode number 127. My name is Phil Johnson. I'm your host for the show this week and every week. Thanks for tuning in to the show and for listening and for telling your friends and all that kind of good stuff. If you happen to be new to the show, and we get new people every week, so welcome to the show if you're new. This show is all about the pirate community and pirate history and pirate fandom and all that kind of stuff. And we talk to people who are doing cool, interesting things within that genre. And today is no exception. My guest on the show today is Arnon Shorr, who is the writer and director of a film called The Pirate Captain Toledano. And you're like, all right, cool. We've seen pirate films before. This is a different one because today we're going to talk about Jewish pirates. It's not a topic I'd even thought to talk about. Of course, I'm sure they were out there, and obviously they were out there. Otherwise, we wouldn't be talking about it. And this is something that might come up again on the show because there's more to be had here. But this is a very cool little film that is going to be released publicly soon, probably March or so. But I will post the trailer for the film on the show notes for you at underthecrossbones.com/127 so that you can check it out. But we're going to talk to the writer and director, Arnon Shorr, and there's some interesting stuff in here. Whether or not you're Jewish, I'm not Jewish, but although I have been mistaken for Jewish. It's always an interesting one because I got the nose. I got the Italian nose. It's not an Italian nose. It's kind of a Jewish nose. But I've had people come out of the show and go, I knew the show was going to be good because I saw there was a Jewish comic on the show. And I'm like, thanks, not Jewish, Italian. Close enough. So anyway, even if you're not Jewish, there's some really interesting stuff in here about a subject that does not get brought up very much in the pirate community. So new, interesting things. It's been a week. Finished up a pitch project. A friend and I are pitching a project to Audible, the ebook company. And so we've spent a ton of time working on that. That's done now. And we'll see if they pick it up. I don't know. You put things out there. Sometimes they stick, sometimes they don't. So I'm not sweating it one way or another. But we did that. That was a fun project. If it goes, I'll tell you more about it. Right now, that's all it is. But it did take a lot of time this week. And then it was electronics failing in our house. My girlfriend's computer decided it was going to freak out and just not turn on anymore. It starts to turn on, then turns off, turns on, turns off, turns on, turns off. So we had to deal with that, taking that. And that is now at company headquarters or wherever they do the fixie thing on that. So she has no computer. She's got a loaner computer, which is stupid. Because our computers become so personalized, right? It's like an extra limb, and now she's got this loaner computer that we took out of the box 3 days ago, and the Windows is still updating on it, and it's ridiculous. And then she's gonna have it for like 2 weeks, and we got to wipe the whole thing and take it back and get hers, which she'll probably have to start on all over again on completely too. And then I just got a new phone, a new cell phone, Galaxy S7. Not a paid placement because I'm not happy. And then the battery started doing weird stuff, just turning off all of a sudden, whatever. So I went back and forth with Samsung and the company I bought the phone from on Amazon, and then I took it to a repair shop, and they were like, no, we can't do that. And so now I got to send the phone out today to Plano, Texas, so that they can fix the stupid battery. Remember when you could fix a battery yourself, right? You just pulled the back off, you put a new battery in it, and everybody was happy. You can't do that anymore with the new phone. So now I got to mail my thing off because the company sold me a phone with one of the bloated battery, one of those batteries that's had too much to eat or something, and it's all thickened up, and it's breaking the casing, and it's a disaster. So that means I got to go through the next week or two with no cell phone, and that is a scary thought in 2018, is it not? Like, I remember as a kid, as a teenager, a lot of times did not have a cell phone. Had a pager. That's how old I am. Had a pager. But a lot of times, no cell phone because they didn't exist yet. But now the thought of not having a phone is so weird. I'm like, what am I going to listen to in the car? I can't listen to my podcasts and my music in the car. I don't know what I'm going to do. And of course, I already had sold my old phone to a company online that gave me $50 for it. I sent that off like 2 days ago, right before my new phone broke. So my girlfriend was like, "Oh, I've got an extra phone." No, hers is on AT&T. Mine's on Verizon. That doesn't work either. So I have to go. I'm going to Las Vegas this weekend to do some shows, and I have people that I need to keep in contact with while I'm there. I don't know how I'm going to do that. I don't know how it's going to happen. I may have to borrow my mom's phone. She doesn't use it. I might as well. So I don't know. We'll see what happens. It's gonna be strange. I'll let you know what life is like on this side of not having a cell phone. I'm terrified. I really am. Speaking of shows, yeah, that's coming up. This Friday, February the 2nd, I'll be at the Poet and Patriot in Santa Cruz, California. Saturday, February the 3rd, I will be doing a set at Jokesters. That is at the D Casino in Las Vegas, Nevada. Sunday, February 4th, I will be performing for everybody who does not like football at the Laugh Factory, and that is at the Tropicana Casino in Las Vegas. Friday, February 9th, Good Times in the Grotto. That is at the Sports Basement in San Francisco, California. Sports Basement? Yes. Yeah. Sporting goods store. I know. Weird. But it's a fun show. So that's Friday, February 9th. Sports Basement, San Francisco, California. Saturday, February the 10th, I'll be at the Rincon Valley Tap Room. That's in Santa Rosa, California. And then coming up later in February 22 to 24, I will be at the San Luis Obispo Comedy Festival, the Slow Comedy Festival. Or the Slow Comedy Festival. I think that's how they should say it every time. I don't have the exact performances for that one yet. I should find out soon. But if you happen to be near Slow, come on out. February 22 to 24. It's a great festival. Really, really fun. Oh, boy. If you are enjoying the show, and I hope you are, come join us over on Facebook. Facebook.com/underthecrossbones. Twitter.com/undercrossbones. And, of course, make sure you're subscribed. Spotify's got us now, Apple Podcasts /iTunes, whatever you're still calling it, and Podcast Addict, Stitcher, Slacker, wherever you listen to podcasts, we're there. So make sure that you click that subscribe button so you get the new episodes every Tuesday, first thing in the morning. And of course, you can get all the show notes for this episode at underthecrossbones.com/127. By the way, hey, would you like to learn how to play the guitar? I know there's a lot of people who go, one of these days, I'd like to learn how to play the guitar. I happen to teach how to play the guitar, and I've got a thing for you. It's free. It's called the 30-Day Guitar Challenge. And the goal is, what you're going to do is you're going to learn 3 songs in 30 days with just like 10 minutes a day of playing time. Just 10 minutes a day. That is such a small amount of time that it's stupid not to do it. That's a goal-setting thing, right? You make it such a small action that it's dumb not to do it, right? So 10 minutes of playing time each day on your guitar, and you will learn 3 songs in 30 days. It's free. If you want to sign up and check it out, go to underthecrossbones.com/guitar, and you can learn how to play guitar from me. That's how it works. All right, let's dig in. We're going to talk some Jewish pirates. Yeah, this is a cool, interesting, a new kind of discussion that, like I said, I hadn't even thought to bring something on the show because it just wasn't a subject that occurred to me until I saw the trailer for the Pirate Captain Toledano. So we're going to get into it right now. Here's Arnon Shorr, writer and director of the Pirate Captain Toledano. Enjoy. Jewish pirates are something that's never been brought up on this show before. And I hadn't even really thought of it as a topic until I ran across your Facebook page about your short film, The Pirate Captain Toledano. So tell us a little bit about the film, and then we'll dig into sort of the history behind it.
Well, The Pirate Captain Toledano is a short film about Jewish pirates. You haven't heard of Jewish pirates very much, and it's probably because their stories haven't been told very much. As far as I know, The Pirate Captain Toledano is the only short film, or the only film really in general, to depict a Jewish pirate character. It tells the story of a stowaway who is a refugee from the Spanish Inquisition, who stows away on a pirate ship because he wants to join the crew and wants to become a pirate. He's caught, and the captain of the ship has to decide whether to cast him overboard for being a stowaway or whether to bring him in and have him join the pirates as they plunder Spanish ships in the Caribbean. The idea occurred to me. I mean, much like you, I had never heard of Jewish pirates. The whole concept was foreign.
Sure.
Until a friend of mine introduced me to a book by a guy named Kritzler called Jewish Pirates of the Caribbean.
Okay.
It's kind of a silly sounding title, but the book is very, very interesting, and it goes into the history of Jewish piracy.
Okay.
It was a fascinating history. I'd never heard anything like it before. And it felt to me that it's a history that paints piracy in a very different light.
Okay.
I mean, the very, very basic bare bones of it is Jews were expelled from Spain and Portugal starting in 1492 by the Spanish Inquisition. At the time, a lot of Jews or a lot of people involved in maritime pursuits, in maritime trade and cartography and navigation and stuff like that, were Jews. The Jewish community was very into education. You had to be educated to be able to do a lot of these things.
Sure.
So for some of the Jews who were expelled from Spain and Portugal, the sea was a natural escape route.
Okay.
So, and that's where you have stories of there being crypto Jews, Jews who were in hiding among Columbus's crew, for example. So there were Jews on the high seas. They had escaped Spain and Portugal and were trying to find a way to make a life for themselves. And according to Kritzler's book, some of those Jews turned to either piracy or privateering as a means of survival. And the neat thing was, especially in the 16th century and into the 17th century, if you were a pirate or if you were a privateer, who were you going to attack? You were going to attack the folks who were the dominant power on the ocean, and that was the Spanish.
Sure.
So there's an element of vigilantism, there's an element of revenge, there's an element of kind of a justice element to the story of Jewish pirates that I thought was incredibly interesting. So I felt like, let's find a way to tell a Jewish pirate story. Let's try to innovate in this way, bring Jewish pirates to the screen.
Yeah. So the time period, then, if we're talking early 1500s, that's sort of well before our quote unquote golden age of piracy. And so that's probably why a lot of those stories haven't come out, because they're 200 years too early, essentially.
Although the Jewish pirate history does extend a good way. I mean, there are stories of Moses Cohen Enriquez, who was, it's not clear that he was a pirate, but he was involved in a major attack on a Spanish, I think it was a Spanish silver fleet in the 1620s, if I remember correctly. And you have Samuel Palanche, who was a privateer out of Holland, privateering for the Dutch, and he was also 17th century, I think. So, I mean, his parents or his grandparents had been expelled from Spain. He was born in Morocco. He came to Holland, and I mean, he was a fascinating character in that he was the president of his synagogue when he was on land, and he was a privateer when he was out at sea. So there were several generations of people, not necessarily just that first generation that was expelled in the early years of the Inquisition, but it kept going. The Inquisition itself kept going. A lot of people don't realize the Inquisition wasn't officially concluded until deep into the 19th century.
Oh, yeah, that's true. I wasn't aware of that. I thought it was much shorter lived than that.
Right.
That's interesting. And may I just say, the name Moses Cohen Enriquez may be the greatest name ever.
He's an interesting character. There are a lot of interesting characters in this history that you don't typically encounter.
Yeah, that's really fascinating, because I mean, I think we think of pirates as either men of little faith altogether, or definitely in the Spanish Catholic or English Church of England mold, the whole Judeo-Christian thing. But we don't think of other people being in there, and there had to be other people in there because there were pirates from all over the world in different countries, and Muslim and all that kind of stuff. The Barbary pirates and what all. So it's interesting that these stories haven't been brought out more. Why do you think that they kept being pirates later, not after the Inquisition, since we've talked about that went longer than we thought, but why do you think they kept being pirates later than that first wave?
That's a good question. I think that, first of all, the Inquisition was still an active force. There still was not really a good place for Jews to settle.
Okay.
That was completely safe. I mean, Spain had been a place where Jews could thrive for 1,000 years before the Inquisition came through. And that really kind of shook the faith. that any place that seemed safe was really going to be safe for very long. So even though Holland was very, very welcoming to the Jews, especially after the Inquisition, but if you were in Holland and you could remember the Inquisition, or you had been told stories of it and you knew the history, you knew that, well, this place is safe for now, but that doesn't mean it's going to be safe forever.
Right.
So there's always this underlying sense of instability and potential risks. I think that's a part of it. And the other part, of course, is Spain was still around. And, for a lot of these Jewish pirates, the point was not piracy per se. The point was, this is a way to strike back. This is a way to try to undermine or destabilize this openly hostile regime.
And that was, I think, part of the plan for other non-Jewish pirates. But do you think it was more of a driving force than the other aspects of piracy, freedom and democracy and, that kind of stuff, even though it wasn't necessarily called that at the time, really? But do you think that getting back at Spain was a bigger force in their thinking than some of the other stuff?
Yeah. I mean, from what I've read, and again, it's not just that there aren't a lot of movies about Jewish pirates, there aren't a lot of books about them either. So from what little I've read, all the Jewish pirates have some sort of anti-Spain agenda. I have not encountered any, for example, I haven't encountered any privateers who operated for the Spanish crown.
Okay.
It's like any Jewish privateers, I should say.
Right.
They're all either, privateering for the Dutch against Spain, or in the Mediterranean, they're working for Barbarossa and attacking Spanish ships. And, it's all, there's a very, very clear focus from character to character to character in the history, where the ships they're attacking and the stuff that they're plundering is predominantly Spanish.
That's really interesting. So in looking into this history and all the possible stories that are there, how did you decide on the story that you were going to use for your film?
So the story that I used for my film is made up.
Sure.
I invented the characters out of nothing. To me, the thing that made the Jewish pirate history so fascinating was, it wasn't just the individual characters, but it was this general idea of this added layer of motivation that Jewish pirates could have. So what I wanted to do was to weave a story, to create a story that depicts pirates with that motivation, with a motivation of kind of existential survival. And not just survival of the physical person, but survival of a religion, of an ideology, of a people. That's kind of tied into the piracy that they're doing and to their identity as pirates. So I invented characters, and I invented a conflict that could bring out some of those themes, that could really define my story, not just as a pirate film where the pirates happen to be Jewish, but as very much a Jewish pirate narrative.
And it's beautifully shot. Is it?
Thank you.
It to me, it looked like the first 9 minutes of a much longer film. Is that the plan at some point?
That would be nice, wouldn't it? A lot of people ask me, is there more? Can there be more? And there was one film festival. We showed the film, and somebody in the audience at the Q&A said, well, can we see the rest of the movie? Can we see a feature? I asked him if he brought his checkbook to the movie theater. Pirate movies are expensive.
Certainly.
So it's kind of a tough sell. Another thing that makes it kind of a tough sell, and this is a really interesting challenge in Hollywood, there's a sense that Jewish stories are going to be harder to make money off of. It's going to be harder to kind of bring it to market. And, if it's quote unquote too Jewish, maybe people won't be so interested. Maybe people won't see the movie. I mean, my sense of it is if it's done right, it's a good story regardless, and people will love it. It's just a matter of doing it right. But, you have to find the right investors. You have to find the right sources of funding who also believe that it can be done right. So I'm trying. I'm looking around.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. I've always kind of found that odd too, considering how many Jewish friends I have in Hollywood. That there's not more done.
I'm a traditionally observant Jew, and a lot of the stuff that I've written, a lot of the films I've pitched have been Jewish, and I've found, by and large, it's the Jewish producers that I've pitched to that have been most vocally opposed to putting Jewish content on the screen.
Really?
And it's a very complicated psychology behind that, because you'd think, well, they're Jews, they should have an affinity for these narratives, but there's also that sense of, and this is a historical thing in Hollywood. This goes back to the founding of Hollywood by Eastern European Jewish immigrants.
Sure. Yeah, sure.
They came to Hollywood. They came to America first, and then they came to Hollywood, and they established this empire.
Uh-huh.
And they were all, the heads of the studios in the teens and 20s basically were all born in a 500-mile radius in Eastern Europe. Most of them could remember persecution. Most of them could remember pogroms. And they saw in the United States an opportunity to not be identified as Jews. They could be Americans here in a way that they couldn't be Polish.
Right.
They were Jews in Poland, but they couldn't really be German. They couldn't really be Austrian, whatever it was, wherever they came from. They couldn't completely be that.
Uh-huh.
But in America, they could, or they really tried to, just be purely American. So there was a strong hesitation right from the beginning of Hollywood for these Jewish moguls to put Jewish stories on screen. And I think that culture has seeped through the industry, and it's still there. And I pitch Jewish stuff all the time, but people are still uncomfortable to really self-identify in that way. And even you think of some of the most notable Jews in Hollywood, and Spielberg, of course, comes to mind.
Sure.
And for many, many years, he himself wouldn't really acknowledge his own Jewish identity and didn't want anything to do with it. And in the recent documentary about him on HBO, he even talks about that, how he didn't really want to be seen as Jewish until much later in life. And, then he started making films like Schindler's List and Munich, and he got a little more comfortable with it. But for him, it was a process also.
Huh. That's really interesting and absolutely makes sense. And it's why I'm always super confused about people who are like, oh, the Jews are trying to take over everything. It's like, no, the Jews are trying to be just quiet and normal and make some money and run a business.
Just like everybody else.
Just like everybody else, yeah. So let's dig into your history a little bit. How did you get into filmmaking? How did you get to this point where you are?
I grew up outside of Boston.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was 10 years old, I was at a friend's house and somebody said, oh, you should go see that new dinosaur movie. So we thought, oh, that sounds interesting. We went to a movie theater a few blocks away, and the movie was Jurassic Park. I sat in the back row, and I watched it through my fingers, and it was the most astonishing thing I'd ever seen. But the real key for me was at the very end. There's that shot of the helicopter flying into the sunset, and it says directed by Steven Spielberg.
Okay.
And something about that triggered something in my brain. I thought, why does that name sound familiar? Why have I heard that name before? I'd never paid attention to credits.
Okay.
So I went home, I looked it up, and I saw, oh, this guy directed E.T.
Right.
I love that movie.
This
guy directed it, the Indiana Jones films. Those are great. This guy directed Jaws. I'd never seen Jaws, but I'd heard a lot about it.
Sure.
And that was the first time that I really began to realize that movies don't just kind of show up out of nowhere. People make them. In Boston, you don't see that. Here in LA, you see it all the time. People are constantly making movies. You're driving by and there's a production. But in Boston, it's not really a thing. So it was a big revelation for me at 10 years old that was a thing that people do. And I'd always been a storyteller. I'd always been interested in telling stories and entertaining. But that was the moment that I began to really understand that there's something about movies that's different, and that was really calling to me. So I pursued it. I made short films in high school, and I taught myself everything that I could. I took out all 3 books from the library. At the time, there weren't very many. Now there are quite a few more. But I just pursued it and pursued it and pursued it, and it's been a couple decades now. And I've made dozens of short films and web series episodes and some micro budget features and lots and lots of stuff. And I love it. It's what I do.
Nice. Did you learn filmmaking primarily through your own reading and trial and error, or did you go to school for it? How did you do that?
Trial and error is funny, mostly error.
Yeah.
I spent too much time in high school making movies.
Okay.
So my grades weren't good enough to get me into any film school. So
ironic.
Despite all my applications, I was not able to get to film school. I ended up going to Brandeis University outside of Boston. My mother had been teaching there for many years, and I got a tuition discount as a result.
Okay.
And when I started out, they didn't have a film program. And actually, when I applied, the head of admissions called my mother and said, every other word on your son's application is film. Does he know that we don't have a film program? So I went there. I started out with a philosophy major.
Okay.
And they have a wonderful option. If you're really motivated, you can create your own independent interdisciplinary degree where you take courses in a whole bunch of different departments and kind of make something of your own. So
sure.
I ended up graduating with a film studies degree. That was one of those, an independently crafted major.
Okay.
And it was mostly film history and theory because they didn't really have any production classes.
Sure.
But that's where I got my academic film background. But all the production stuff, self-taught and experience and making mistakes.
Yeah. And oftentimes that's the best way to do it. I mean, looking at your pirate film, there was nothing in there that struck me as amateur, which you often will see it, in a low budget short film. Sometimes you're going to be like, that was a weird camera angle for no reason, or something like that. But
right.
yours looked very, whenever there's nothing that jumps out at me as, oh my God, what was that? Then it's usually a pretty good thing. It's the same way I deal with music. If I don't, if I'm teaching a student and I go, don't do that, then there's commentary to be made. But yours looked very well done and obviously had tons of experience behind it. So I'm almost happy to hear that there was not a full-fledged film program behind that.
Oh, no. That was the genesis of that project was really, I came up with the idea, crowdfunded it. And, the nice thing about being here in LA is that you're surrounded by lots of people with talent who have no work because they're surrounded by other people with talent who have the jobs. So you can find talented people for not terribly expensive and create some really, really compelling stuff. But yeah, I look at some of the film schools here and the resources that film school students have at their disposal and the amount of money that they spend on their short films, and I get very jealous.
I can imagine. So then with this film in particular, what was your process for, when did it come out? I'm not exactly sure.
Here's the timeline. In September of 2016, it was very quick. I attended a seminar or a presentation by a small crowdfunding platform.
Okay.
Called juicer.org. And Juicer is a Jewish crowdfunding platform for Jewish themed projects. And, they made their pitch, and I thought, well, that's kind of interesting. And I thought to myself, maybe I should try to make a Jewish short film and run a crowdfunding campaign and see what happens. I had read the book about Jewish pirates maybe a year earlier, and I loved it, but I just assumed that I'd never make a Jewish pirate movie, or certainly wouldn't make one soon because it's expensive. But right after that Juicer presentation, I got this idea in my head about this particular story, and I couldn't shake it. I sat down and wrote the first draft of the script in about 45 minutes. And within about a week, I decided, I've got to see if I can make this happen. Of course, I made several cardinal mistakes in writing the script because it's set on the water. It's a period piece.
Right. The
set itself is very complicated and elaborate. It's not the sort of thing that one can typically pull off on the cheap.
Right.
So I quickly budgeted it out, and really the biggest limiting factor was the set itself.
Yeah.
How was I going to find a pirate ship? So I started, doing my research, trying to see if there were standing sets. In LA, there are all sorts of standing sets. You have the hospital set and the jail set and the police precinct set and all those sorts of things because they're so common, and they just have them set up and productions can come in, shoot, and leave. It's very, very easy, and it's not terribly expensive. But there are no pirate ship standing sets. It's not a common enough genre to make it worth having these things around. So I was a little disappointed, and then had the thought, well, maybe there are tall ships, replica tall ships here and there. So I started calling around, got in touch with the Ocean Institute in Dana Point. And I said, hey, is it possible to film on your ships? Is that a thing that you do? And they said, yeah. Spielberg shot a scene of Amistad on these ships, and they've had some other stuff shoot there. And I said, great. How much does it cost? And they told me how much it cost, and I fell off my chair.
Yeah.
And I was very sad. I said, thank you, but maybe another time. And then I emailed them the script. And I said, this is what I'm trying to do. If you know anybody else on the California coast who has a tall ship who might be able to offer it to me for cheaper, could you let me know? Because I'd love to make this movie, and I just can't afford your rates.
Right.
So they emailed me back. They said they love the script, and they think I'm doing something really unique and different, and it dovetails with their maritime history mission. So they cut their rate by, I don't know, about 60% or so.
Nice.
No, it wasn't that. 70%.
Wow.
And that made the whole thing affordable. So I was able to move forward, and I launched a crowdfunding campaign. We raised a little over $18,000 in a month and a half. Early December 2016, a little over a year ago, we shot the film.
Nice. Did you shoot at night? Because it's a nighttime shoot.
Yes.
So you did shoot at night. I wasn't sure if that was done after the fact or...
No, part of the way that we were able to get the rate that we got is we shot after hours, so we didn't disrupt their operations there. We got there in the art department started dressing the ships in the afternoon, and I got there in the late afternoon as the sun was setting, and we got our first shots once it was dark.
Okay.
And shot at night, and we wrapped. I remember coming up after we wrapped, and as we're kind of packing all the equipment off the ships, we got treated to a really beautiful sunrise. But yeah, it was an overnight. It was a long shoot. It was exhausting, but it was also, a magical experience to get to shoot a film on the ships at Dana Point. We shot on 2 different ships, actually.
Okay.
The captain's quarters and the deck are the Spirit of Dana Point.
Okay.
And the brig and the brig and the hold, the stuff with the other pirates, that was all on the brig Pilgrim.
Okay, interesting.
And both of those ships are at Dana Point.
In your original script, had you planned on shooting at night? Was that a thing? Because I think it really added to the environment of what was going on there to have it in the darkness like that. Rather, daylight would have been a completely different vibe.
Well, with daylight, you can see that there's buildings in the background and roads and power lines and all that sort of stuff. So at night, it's a lot easier to hide all those little details.
Yeah.
I originally wrote it so that whole altercation happens in the captain's cabin.
Oh, okay.
Imagining a larger cabin, larger captain's quarters. But when I saw the tall ships, the captain's quarters were tiny.
Yeah.
And when I originally wrote it, I thought we'd be shooting on a set, not on a ship.
Yeah.
And, when I saw, hey, we have the deck of the tall ship with all the rigging and all this stuff. I mean, it's an amazing resource.
Yeah.
So I shifted the scene up on deck.
Okay.
Just to make the most out of that resource that we had.
Yeah, and I thought your framing in general was very tight anyway, so you couldn't really tell anything in the background outside of the ship, except for this was a ship and it was probably in a water somewhere, and that's all you could really tell. So I appreciated how you were working around whatever was in the background.
Well, there were some city lights in the background. I think they might have crept into some of the shots if you really watch carefully, but. For the most part, we were able, if we kept the camera low to the ground and shot up at our actors, then, beyond them is just open sky. And if we shot down at the actors, then we're just looking at the deck. And so we were able to kind of avoid some of the stuff around. And these ships are in a harbor. So really, I mean, there were basically three directions of city lights that we had to try to avoid.
Yeah, it was very well done. So when you put it out, what's your process in putting it out? I saw you've tons of festival awards and nominations.
Yes.
Was that your next step there?
That was the next step, was to submit the film to festivals. And we were very fortunate. We had our premiere in May at the Los Angeles Jewish Film Festival. It was a really interesting screening. They had a screen as part of an event they do with an organization that provides social activities for Holocaust survivors.
Oh, okay.
So we premiered to a room full of more than 100 Holocaust survivors.
Huh.
So, it's a story really that at its core, it's about survival in the face of persecution.
Sure.
And we screened it to a room of people who knew persecution better than most people in the world.
Right.
Persecution. So it was a really great first audience. And since then, gosh, we've submitted now to hundreds of film festivals. We've gotten in, I have my chart here. We've gotten into 33.
That's great.
Which is pretty. A lot of my earlier films, I didn't even submit them to 33 festivals. So I feel pretty good about this one. And we've been to all over the country, from screenings, of course, in California and New York, but also in West Virginia, in Georgia, in Missouri. Where was it? In Utah. We had a screening in Utah, in North Dakota. It's really kind of gone to all sorts of places. And internationally, it's been great. We've had a whole bunch of festivals in Italy.
Oh, neat.
For some reason, Italy loves this film. I don't know why, but I'm grateful.
There's a vowel at the end of the name. That's all you need. Yeah.
And I was screened in England and in Macedonia.
Oh, wow.
In Lithuania, we had a screening. So it's all sorts of places. And what's interesting about some of these places is that these are places with very, very few Jews.
West Virginia in particular. Yeah.
West Virginia. Although the town in West Virginia where the film screened does have a bit of a Jewish community.
Oh, okay.
But in places like Tetovo, Macedonia,
right,
where you might be able to count the number of Jews living there on one hand. But the festival screened it, and there was an audience and people were interested. So it's really going around the world, and it's I'm very proud of that, because it helps kind of broaden the image of Jewish characters for people who've never met Jews before.
Certainly, yeah. It was what I found interesting about it was not. Even going into it, knowing here's a film about Jewish pirates, it didn't come off as overtly pushy Jewish by any means, which I've never seen in it. That's not a thing that really happens that much. But it was a pirate movie first. Right. And then like if you were just watching from the beginning, you would have no idea unless you knew that there was going to be this particular plot behind it until, because I don't know what the goblet is called. What is that little goblet called?
It's a Kiddush cup.
Okay, yeah. So until that comes out, and even then you're not sure what it is. It just looks like a silver cup of some sort. And until the captain starts speaking Hebrew, you're like, now I know what's going on here, So that sort of suspense, I think, makes it easier and more palatable to somebody who might not be interested in something like that, where it was slipped in so smoothly that it didn't feel pushy at all. And I think that's why it might work in a place that does not have necessarily a Jewish community, and probably would work on a larger scale as well, because then it's a history story.
Yeah. It's a big goal of mine. I'm very interested in telling these Jewish stories, but I'm also interested in, pop entertainment.
Sure.
I'm a student of Spielberg. I want to tell stories that have this broad appeal. So to my mind, the way to do that is to tell a great story.
Right.
Where the Jewishness is a part of the story. It's ideally it's integral to the story, but it's neither tacked on nor the only thing that makes the story interesting. If it's the only thing that makes the story interesting, then the story itself isn't interesting.
Right.
It doesn't work. So it's finding that balance. It's finding a way to tell a story that is interesting inherent and that is also essentially Jewish.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's a tough balance to strike, but to me, that's where if you're going to try to tell Jewish narratives on this large scale, on a large canvas, for a broad audience, that's an important balance to strike.
Yeah, definitely. I think so. So what is then your purpose behind this short film outside of the art? Because short films obviously are not a moneymaker. Nobody gets rich making short films. and you've done a lot of them. So what do you hope to accomplish with this film outside of just the art part of it that would, take you to your next step?
That's a good question. For me, I've been looking very much to tell a story that was mine. I'd been working here in Hollywood for a number of years working on other people's films.
Mm-hmm.
I'd made a lot of short films. I did a lot of web series, did a lot of stuff. But for a while, I was line producing other people's films. I was producing other people's films.
Mm-hmm.
And enough time had gone by that I felt like I need to tell my own story again.
Uh-huh.
So for me, this was an opportunity to tell my own story. And like with every short film, I hoped it would turn out well. I hoped it would work as a calling card, that people might see it and say, "Oh, well, this guy knows how to tell a good story. This guy knows how to direct."
Uh-huh.
So there's certainly that element, the element of building credibility by actually doing the thing that you say that you can do.
Certainly, yeah.
And so far it seems like it's working. I've had producers, see the film and come up to me and say, "Hey, we'd like to talk to you about our own projects," and stuff is brewing right now.
Nice.
That I can't really discuss or disclose too much, but to the extent that I wanted this thing to be a calling card, it's definitely working as a calling card.
Fantastic. I'm glad to hear that. I'm really glad to hear that. And so is there a place publicly where people can see this film outside of festivals, or is it still kind of under festival wraps? Because I know they're real picky about that.
Right. So as of now, we have a few festivals that we're going to that are coming up in the next few months. And I expect there are going to be a handful more between now and May or June or July. And I post about those. I update those on our Facebook page, which is very easy. It's facebook.com/Jewish Pirates.
Right.
Because, Jewish Pirates haven't been a thing yet.
Right.
So it was easy to get that site.
Yeah.
So facebook.com/Jewish Pirates, and I update all that sort of stuff.
Great.
Of the festivals that we're going to, only one of them at the moment has a requirement that we not make the film available to, online to their audience. And that festival is happening in early March. So as of now, the plan is for this film to go up at least on Amazon.com and probably a bunch of other sites by mid to late March.
Okay, fantastic.
So at that point, if people search the Pirate Captain Toledano, then you should be able to find it on, streaming on Amazon.
Fantastic.
And if that changes, again, all this stuff gets updated on the Facebook page. I'm
sure
religious about that. So if anybody just follows the page, you'll get the updates. And eventually everybody's going to be able to get to see the film.
Great. In the meantime, I will put the trailer for the film in the show notes for this episode so that folks can at least see that, and then we can update that later on when the film is actually publicly available. Is the Facebook page is that the best place for people to keep track of what you're doing online, or do you have a regular website of any sort?
We do not have a regular website. We've got Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Okay. For a while, I had an assistant, so we were able to maintain all three. But then my assistant got a real job. And so I've been focusing pretty much exclusively on maintaining the Facebook page. Okay. That's where our biggest audience is right now.
Certainly, yeah, good call.
So that's where the festival information goes, and that's where eventually when the thing's going to go up online.
Fantastic. Well, this has been super fun. Is there anything I didn't ask you about that you want everybody to know?
You've been thorough. You've asked great questions. Come to the Facebook page. Be part of the community. And for anybody who does get a chance to catch the film at any of the festivals, let me know. Tell me what you think of it. It's, for me, a big part of filmmaking is moving people, making impressions on people, getting people excited and interested and entertained. And especially when stuff goes up online, I don't get to feel the audience. I don't get to experience the response.
Right.
So, if you see it, if you like it, or if you don't, I guess, let me know. I'd love to hear from you.
All right. Well, fantastic. I'm so glad we got a chance to do this. This was really, really intriguing, and I am looking forward to finding out more myself. I'm going to go find that book and give it a read through. So thanks for coming on. I appreciate it.
Sweet. Thank you very, very much.
And there it is, friends. That is my interview with Arnon Shorr, writer and director of the Pirate Captain Toledano. How fascinating was that? A lot of indie film talk and getting that work done. That is a backbreaking business, man. I can't. I'm always admiring film people because you just have to rely on so many other people to get the job done. And I think it's a fascinating industry. So we talked a lot of indie film. We talked some Jewish pirates, all that kind of stuff. The book that he mentioned, I will have linked up on the show notes at underthecrossbones.com/127. And of course, that'll be an Amazon link. And if you click that Amazon link, you buy yourself the book or anything else you need from Amazon, which we're all buying things from Amazon now. Amazon kicks me back a few shekels, and shekels, Jewish. That helps keep the show going. So that's nice when you do that, when you click the little Amazon links on the show notes. I appreciate it. If you want to find out more about Arnon Shorr and the Pirate Captain Toledano, go to facebook.com/Jewish Pirates. That also will be linked up on the show notes. And as soon as he has the actual release of the film out, I will make sure that gets up linked on the show notes as well. Like he said, it's going to be March, probably sometime. The festival, the film festivals are real picky about, we don't want anybody to see this until after our festival. And when you're submitting to lots and lots of festivals, and all the festivals say, we don't want it released until after our festival, I don't know. It seems kind of dumb because it's hard to build an audience for a film that nobody's seeing. But anyway, that's how they work. So anyway, that should be out in March. I'll make sure it's linked up. But I will definitely have the trailer in the show notes, which will give you a little taste of it. I've seen the film myself. It's a really great little short film, and I think you're going to dig it when it comes out. So again, that's facebook.com/Jewish Pirates. We're sponsored today, of course, by Pirate Radio The Treasure Coast, WKKC-DB, playing the best music and pirate radio talk. You can listen to Under the Crossbones on both their stations. Just go to pirateradiothetreasurecoast.com or pirateradiotc.com. And, of course, don't forget to grab their apps. That's the Pirate Radio Treasure Coast app. That's their music station. And Pirate Radio Talk, which is their talk station. And, hey, did you go to Gasparilla over the weekend? I hear it was good. I hear there were weddings. There were things happening. There were no weddings to ghost pirates. Stupid story. But there were weddings. There were lots of things happening at Gasparilla over the weekend. If you went, I would like to hear about it. Do this. Call this number. Ready? Call the number, 408-599-2733. Leave me a trip report. Tell me about your experience at Gasparilla. And if it's cool, I will play it on the show. Yeah. And I would like to get a few of these to play on the show. I think that would be fun. So again, that number is 408-599-2733. Tell me about your Gasparilla experience this year, and I'll play it on the show. It'll be all good. Here's something we haven't done in a while. Music on the show. Yeah, I haven't done it because I got tired of chasing after music artists to send me stuff. You would think they would be more proactive, but they are not. Why? Because they're musicians and not business people. But anyway, a friend of mine, Jonah Melvon, has a new album coming out called the RainWater Project, and he sent me a song called All That I Have that I want to play for you. Jonah is a spectacular talent. He's a great guy. He's one of the most down-to-earth people you will ever meet. Generous, warm. He's a fantastic guy. And where we met was years ago. There was an open mic at a place called Cafecito here in downtown San Jose. And this was a room that I probably just didn't belong in at all. I was generally the only white guy in the room, which is fine. I never have a problem with that. But this was, when you think open mic, I know what you're hearing in your head. You're hearing a dude strumming on a G chord, like for way too long, and then singing some lyrics that are pretty bad. This was not that. This was the best open mic I have ever been to anywhere ever. It had a full live band that would back anybody who got up there. And it was all like super talented R&B, soul singers, things like that. It was an amazing open mic that I used to go to every chance I got. And then they would let me get up there and sing my stupid comedy songs and just scream and do my weird junk. And they dug it. It was a very open, accepting crowd of people, which you don't always find in a very, very mixed open mic like that. And it was an amazing thing, and it doesn't exist anymore, and that makes me sad a little bit. A lot, actually. It was a great a great show. But that's where I met Jonah, and we've kept in touch over the years, and he's been involved in various different really cool projects. But he's got a new album out called RainWater Project, and this is the song called All That I Have that we're going to hear from there. And if you want to find out more about him, be sure to go to JonahMelvon.com. Jonah, J-O-N-A-H, Melvon, M-E-L-V-O-N, JonahMelvon.com. So here it is. This is a song called All That I Have.
Yeah. It's all yours anyway. All that I have, I give it to you. All that I have, I give it to you. I give it to you. I give it to you. Yes, it's my pleasure. You're making me better all the time. And I can give you diamonds, pearls, or whatever you like. May not whatever, but you are my treasure, the one to hold. Oh yeah, my highest possession, gift of His grace that makes me pray. All that I have, I give it to you. All that I have, I give it to you. I give it to you. I give it to you. Here when I'm running out of love, I try to find straight from my maker, love is creator, He will guide. Promises I'm making, promises I'm breaking. I'm sorry, love. Love we will push through. This is what I give you, all of me. All that I have, all that I give it to you. All that I have, give it to you. I give it to you. Give it to all that I all that I have, I'll give. I promise to give. All that I have, I give it to you. I promise all that I have, I'll give it to you. Everything, I give it to you. I give it to you. I give it to you. Yeah, give it to you. To you, love. Give it to you, baby.
And that is our show for today, kids. Thank you once again for tuning in. I always appreciate it. I love to have new people coming into the show, checking it out, telling your friends, all that kind of good stuff. It makes me happy. If you want to hear more about the Pirate Captain Toledano and Arnon Shorr's projects, go to facebook.com/Jewish Pirates. You'll find out all about new stuff happening there. If you dug that song, All That I Have, from Jonah Melvon from his new album, The RainWater Project, go to jonahmelvon.com to check that out. We've got lots of cool stuff coming up. Next week, we're going to hear from Janai Merrick, author of The Dangerous Voyage of Gup the Sailor, which is a great little book. We got Keith Martin from the National Institute of Standards and Technology coming up. I know, you're like, what does that have to do with pirates? It does, and there's a cool story, and it's a great interview. So it's a fun one. So stay tuned for that one. And then we got Bill Fernie, author of Black Hearts, White Bones, coming up. Cool stuff. I got a couple on the schedule that are going to be really cool. I'm finally getting some things on the show that I've been trying for a while now. So it's going to be good stuff. Thank you once again for tuning in. You can check out all the show notes for this episode at underthecrossbones.com/127. If you want to find out what I'm up to, go to philjohnsоncomedy.com or click on the tour dates button on underthecrossbones.com, and everything will be good. And maybe by next time I talk to you, I'll have a phone. I'm going to go huddle in a corner and be terrified of the modern world now. See you next week.